For nearly a century, the fate of professional cycling in Great Britain was defined by staggering, just undeniable mediocrity. I mean, it was a history of almost complete failure on the world stage, but then, on one single day in 2003, the entire trajectory of this organization changed forever. Today in this explainer, we are going to completely deconstruct the mechanics of how an ordinary group of athletes transformed into absolutely untouchable world champions. And more importantly, we'll see how the exact same underlying mechanics dictate the trajectory of our entire lives. So let's just dive right in.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this transformation, we have to look at just how bad things actually were. Since 1908, that's a span of 110 years, British riders had managed to win just a single gold medal at the Olympic Games. And in cycling's premier event, the Tour de France, their record was somehow even worse. 0 victories. Not a single British cyclist had ever won the race. The performance of British riders was so incredibly underwhelming that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe actually refused to sell bikes to the team. They were literally terrified that if other professionals saw the British team using their gear, it would actively hurt their sales. The team was, for all intents and purposes, a cautionary tale.
But the turning point finally arrived with the hiring of a new performance director. His name was Dave Brailsford. Now, what made Brailsford entirely different from literally any coach before him was his relentless, almost obsessive commitment to a really counterintuitive strategy. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains. Basically, it's a hyper-analytical philosophy built on searching for a tiny 1% margin of improvement in absolutely everything you do. Brailsford's hypothesis was simple but honestly radical. If you completely broke down every single conceivable component that goes into riding a bike and then improved each of those individual components by just 1%, you would achieve a massive compounding increase when you put them all back together.
What's really fascinating here is just how incredibly granular Brailsford's team got. They didn't just focus on the obvious things, right? Sure, they redesigned the bike seats and rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip, but they pushed these 1% shifts into highly specific, seemingly insignificant areas. They actually had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain exact muscle temperatures. They used biofeedback sensors, and they definitely didn't stop there. Get this, they hired a surgeon to teach each rider the absolute best way to wash their hands, just to reduce the probability of catching a cold. They tested and determined the exact type of pillow and mattress that led to the best night's sleep for each specific rider. They even went as far as painting the inside of the team transport truck stark white. Why? Simply so they could spot little specks of dust that would normally go completely unnoticed, but could slightly degrade the performance of their finely tuned bikes.
So as these hundreds of tiny, overlooked improvements started to accumulate, the results were nothing short of explosive. Just 5 years after Brailsford took over, British cycling absolutely dominated the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, winning an astounding 60% of the available gold medals. 4 years later in London, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. That exact same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to ever win the Tour de France. His teammate Chris Froome would go on to win it repeatedly, giving the British team 5 Tour de France victories in just 6 years. In a 10-year span, they captured 178 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals. It is widely regarded as the most successful run in cycling history.
Section 1. The compounding math.
Okay, so how does this incredible transformation actually happen? We have to shift our focus from this historical sports anomaly to the ironclad mathematical laws of continuous improvement. You see, we are all conditioned to believe that massive success requires massive action. We put immense pressure on ourselves to make earth-shattering improvements. But an exponential growth curve reveals a very established scientific truth about human behavior. The effects of our actions do not just add up, they compound. In the very beginning, there is almost no difference between making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse. It feels the same. But as time moves forward, the curve sharply diverges. The small improvements begin to build upon themselves, multiplying the final results.
Let's actually look at the raw numbers here because they're mind-blowing. If you manage to get just 1% better each day for one single year, the compounding math dictates that you will end up 37.78 times better by the time you're done. Let me repeat that. Not 37% better, nearly 38 times better. However, this mathematical law is a double-edged sword. If you get 1% worse each day for a year, replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, you will decline nearly all the way down to 0. A 1% decline here and there accumulates into toxic, devastating results over time.
So, the absolutely crucial point is this. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. In the exact same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them.
What this really means is that your current outcomes in life are simply lagging measures of your daily routines. Think about it. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habits. You ultimately get what you repeat.
But this brings us to a very natural, deeply frustrating question, doesn't it? If a 1% shift is so mathematically powerful, and the path to a 38 times improvement is so clearly defined, why on earth is it so incredibly difficult to maintain good habits? Why do we so easily slide back into our previous unproductive routines after just a few days? Well, to understand this, we must shift our focus away from the mathematics of compounding and dive deep into the psychology of human friction.
Section 2. The Plateau of Latent Potential.
The reason we struggle so much to maintain good habits is a hidden phase of progress that we literally have to endure before seeing any tangible rewards. It's called the plateau of a latent potential. To grasp how this works, I want you to imagine an ice cube sitting on a table directly in front of you. The room is freezing cold. You can literally see your breath in the air. The temperature is currently exactly 25 degrees. Ever so slowly, the room begins to heat up. 26 degrees, 27, 28. You are putting in the work. The temperature is steadily rising, but the ice cube is still sitting there on the table, completely unchanged. 29 degrees, 30, 31. Still, absolutely nothing has happened. This perfectly mimics the frustrating lack of linear progress in our daily efforts. We make changes, we put in the energy, we do the work, but we see zero visible results. It feels like we're going nowhere. Then, the room hits 32 degrees, and suddenly, the ice begins to melt. A 1-degree shift, seemingly no different from all the temperature increases that came before it, has unlocked a huge, transformative change. You know, complaining about not achieving success despite working hard in those early days is exactly like complaining about the ice cube not melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work was never wasted. It was simply being stored for a delayed breakthrough.
When our expectations and reality clash, a very dangerous gap forms. We humans expect progress to happen in a straight, linear fashion. We put in an hour of work, we expect an hour's worth of visible results. But, as we've established, compounding processes are exponential. Because the most powerful outcomes are delayed, you enter what is known as the Valley of Disappointment. People make a few small changes, they go for a run for a few weeks, they fail to see a tangible result, and so they quit. They abandon their efforts just moments before they cross the melting threshold, and their compounding curve skyrockets.
And this plateau of latent potential, it is not just some quirk of human behavior. It is an established structural mechanism found everywhere in nature. Think about tectonic plates. Two massive plates can grind against each other for millions of years, slowly storing up unimaginable geologic pressure before a single threshold is crossed and an earthquake violently erupts. Or a bamboo plant. It can barely be seen for the first 5 years of its life as it meticulously builds an extensive root system completely underground before suddenly exploding 90 feet into the air within just 6 weeks. Even cancer spends 80% of its life entirely undetectable before taking over the body in a matter of months. All the monumental action happens only after crossing a threshold of stored potential.
Section 3. Systems over goals.
So if we want to survive the Valley of Disappointment and break through this plateau of latent potential, we have to entirely abandon conventional wisdom. We literally must abandon our cultural obsession with goal setting and adopt a purely structural, mechanical approach. Let's ruthlessly break down why a goals-first mindset structurally fails. There are 4 main flaws. First, winners and losers possess the exact same goals. Every Olympian wants the gold medal. Every candidate wants the job. If the successful and unsuccessful share the exact same objective, well, the goal itself cannot be what differentiates them. Second, achieving a goal is only a momentary fix. If you have a messy room and set a goal to clean it, you will have a clean room for now. But if you maintain the same sloppy habits that led to a messy room in the first place, you will be looking at a new pile of clutter by the end of the week. Third, goals inherently delay happiness. The mindset is always, once I reach my goal, then I will be happy, which completely robs you of joy in the present moment. And fourth, goals are actively at odds with long-term progress. Once a runner finishes a half marathon, they often stop training altogether because the goal that was driving them is suddenly gone.
We have to establish a definitive distinction here. Goals are about outcomes. They are the results you want to achieve. Systems, on the other hand, are about the processes. They are the actions you actually do on a daily basis.
The British cycling team did not dominate because they suddenly decided they had a grand goal to win the Tour de France. That goal was always there. They achieved absolute dominance because they implemented a highly specific system of continuous 1% improvements. Committing to the process, designing a system that incrementally improves your daily inputs, is the only reliable method for escaping the valley of disappointment.
If you take away just one central truth from this entire explainer on the science of continuous improvement, let it be this unyielding law of human behavior. Ask yourself right now, what systems are you building today? Because ultimately, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.